I invite the member for Fraser Nicola to lead the House in prayer or reflection.
As we gather today, we pray for mindfulness of the special and unique opportunity we have to work for our constituents in our province, and for the strength and wisdom as we undertake that work.
Introductions by members. Minister of Agriculture.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, today is Ice Cream Day in BC. Mr. Speaker, I am utterly excited to have some special guests to introduce in the chamber today. Mr. Speaker, I am going to seize the moment and milk it for all it's worth. Joining us from our amazing dairy industry are Lindsay Herr from Robin Creek Dairy, Mickey Allard and Baby Campbell from Brackenhurst Farm, Dave Taylor from Viewfield Farms, Sarah Sash from West River Farm, Mark and Krista Van Clay from M&L Farms, Jeff Hansen from Hansen Farms, John and June DeDude from Sunninghill Holstings, Greg and Brianna Strucker from Riverbend Dairy. We are so fortunate to have the dairy industry here to talk about the challenges and the successes of the industry. Mr. Speaker, I'm not sure if our guests have heard, but the opposition tried to pass a law banning ice cream in BC. But as your government, we deemed it unconstitutional. Welcome to the chamber.
Minister of Mines and Energy.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Joining us in the Members' Gallery this morning is His Excellency Scott Ryan, the High Commissioner of Australia to Canada. Before his role as High Commissioner, he served as President of the Senate in the Australian Parliament, and before that, he held various ministerial portfolios in the Australian government. So he is certainly no stranger to the kind of question period he will witness here shortly. He's joined by Ms. Isla Black, Second Secretary, and Mr. Kevin Lamb, Honorary Consul of Australia in Vancouver. His Excellency is here on his first official visit to British Columbia. I had the pleasure of meeting with him yesterday, and today he will be meeting with the Premier, as well as with a number of ministers, including the Solicitor General, the Minister of Forests, and the Minister of State for Trade. Will the House please make him feel very welcome?
Government House Leader.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker, and I have a couple of introductions that I'd like to make today. The first, though, are there are 5 individuals who I'd like to thank there in the gallery today. Today is their final week with us, and that are they are the 2022 BC Government Caucus interns. And as all of us know on both sides of the House, interns do an amazing job for us. And so I'd like to thank Ireland Bell Smith, Jerica Kaduhada, Aidan Guerrero, Corey Kilbisky, and Katie Cordy. I want to thank them very much for their hard work for all the government MLAs.
Member for Chilliwack.
What?
Oh, sorry.
Yes. Thank
Please
you.
continue.
Yes, I know I don't make many introductions, Honourable Speaker, but today I do have a couple.
All right.
So the second introduction, Honourable Speaker, is as you all know, people do retire from, sometimes from this chamber, but occasionally from the press gallery. And today we have a long-time member of the press gallery, Tom Fletcher, whose last day it is in this place. Oh, shame, honourable members. Applauding the last day of a journalist, particularly one as esteemed as Mr. Fletcher, who has been around these chambers for a very long time and has reported on events over a number of years. I do know that many of you do think he has a certain political bent on a certain side of the spectrum, but I am assured, honourable members, that when he does retire, he will be going to his communist plot to do Cantaloupe Smackdown in the very near future. Would the House please welcome a good retirement?
Member for Chilliwack. Member for Chilliwack.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I, too, would like to welcome my friends from the Dairy Association. I have open invitations to pet cows at some of their farms anytime, which is great. But I also have a very special introduction to make, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to introduce Rob Sleeth. He's in the gallery today. Rob lives in Richmond and is a member of the Minister's Provincial Accessibility Committee. And Rob is a passionate advocate for those living with vision loss, and particularly to providing them with the same rights and access to information as the sighted. Rob is also a well-known transportation advocate in the Lower Mainland and has been president of the Committee for the Promotion of Accessible Conventional Transit and founding chair of Access Transit Users Advisory Committee for the South Coast British Columbia Transportation Authority. I know everyone knows already that today we will be making an accessibility announcement in the Hall of Honor and having some refreshments and a little bit of food. So I hope that everyone stops by and meets many of the other members of our Provincial Accessibility Committee. So if the House would please welcome Rob Sleeth.
Member for Delta South.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. And I too would like to say thank you to the BC Dairy Association who have come over here to Victoria. We had a wonderful get-together with them with our caucus last night, and we had some great banter back and forth about the industry in general in British Columbia with farming and agriculture. These good folks have travelled a long ways. Some of them are from Smithers, from Saanich here on the island, from Courtenay, Chilliwack, Creston, Grinrod, so we welcome them here today, and it was a great time. I also am proud to say that at one time I did what they did, and it's a grueling lifestyle, milking cows twice a day at 5 a.m. and 5 p.m. Whether you get up in the morning with a cold, the flu, or even a hangover, you still have to milk those cows every morning. So, Honourable Speaker, thank you. I do have one other introduction to make. We have some good friends from Delta that are here today, and I believe they're in the gallery. Mr. Harry Arun and his wife Ginny, and Jazz and Serene Dutia. So welcome them, and a round of applause for my guests. Thank
you. Minister of Environment and Climate Change Strategy.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and it may be a coincidence that the group I'm about to introduce is here on Ice Cream Day, but maybe not. They're not in the gallery at this moment, but they are in the precinct. There are two groups of grade 5 students from Vancouver Talmud Torah School. They're visiting the Legislature today with their teachers. I hope to meet with them later today. Any of you pass them in the hallways, please make them feel welcome. They'll be in the gallery later today, and some of them, I hope, will be checking out some of the seats for the future.
Member for Surrey White Rock.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And one of the best parts of this job is actually getting to interact with the students that come here. And I've got two classes today from Star of the Sea from my riding, and they will be entering the precinct here, I think, in the next 20 minutes. But I ask that the House please make them welcome.
Leader of the Official Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to just play off the government House Leader's recognition that after today our press gallery is going to be a little bit different here in Victoria, because we are bidding farewell to Tom Fletcher, an intrepid reporter with the Black Press who has done just such an amazing job here since 2005 when he joined the press gallery, and was the voice, and this is important, the voice for countless communities, rural communities especially, throughout the province of British Columbia. Whether it was the Ashcroft Cache Creek Journal, to the Castlegar News, to the Fernie Free Press, to the Haida Gwaii Observer, and the Williams Lake Tribune, Tom has spent years connecting communities to what's happening here in Victoria that affects them directly, and making sure that many of those issues are going to be addressed by holding government and opposition to account, which is what really good journalists do, and he did. And as press gallery president for over half a decade, Tom contributed a great deal to this institution, and in return, He was granted the opportunity of a lifetime when he got to dine with the Duchess of Cambridge, Kate Middleton. That's pretty impressive. So on behalf of the entire BC Liberal Caucus, and I would indeed say everyone that serves in this legislature, I want to thank you, Tom, for your years of tremendous service. Journalism matters. It is important that government and oppositions always be held to account. Thank you for the work that you've done, and hopefully you will continue to do something in the future related. Thank you.
Member for Vancouver West End.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. I rise today to acknowledge somebody who watches this House, who watches what we do, and wants us all to do it better. My friend, my neighbour, good friend to my son Dev, Jody Lee, happy birthday. Thank you, Honourable Speaker.
Leader of the third party.
Oh, thank you, Honourable Speaker. I'm delighted to welcome back to the House in the gallery Dr. Lisa Gunderson, and she has two other students who are part of the Black Youth Empowerment Program. Aisha Ismail is in her second year of business at UBC, and Avi Gunderson, a grade 10 student at Mount Doug, both part of the Black Youth Empowerment Program. Both were honoured by the Ahavi Youth Leadership Award for Community Involvement, Initiative and Inspiration for Black Youth on April 30th. And I'm delighted to have them join us here today. Also with Dr. Gunderson is her son, Dominic Gunderson. He's a student of political theory and English at St. Mary's College in California. And in real time, we got to learn this morning that Dominic recently made it to the Dean's List. So congratulations, Dominic, and welcome to all to the Chamber today.
Member for Chilliwack-Kent.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. So as my colleagues have mentioned, BC Dairy is here today, and I'd like to introduce some folks from Chilliwack-Kent who came all the way out here. Firstly, I was very grateful to see Mark and Krista Van Klein here with BC Dairy from M&L Farm on Camp River Road, and thank you for being here. Also with us from West River Farm in Chilliwack-Kent is Sarah Sash. And so Sarah's family, her partner Jean and her sons Winston and Curtis, are holding down the fort at the farm right now during a really difficult time, as we know. The Sash family have been an important part of my time as an MLA. Their farm was one of the first dairy farms that I went to visit as an MLA. Also, Jean's uncle Jim Sash recently taught me how to plow at Chilliwack's 100th plowing match. I won last place, and I'm very grateful. I'm very grateful to Jim for his very patiently teaching me to not only start and drive the plow, but also how to stop it. Also, it gives me a very strange flex when I drive past farmers' fields, and now I can fully appreciate the complexity of those straight lines. So would the House please make welcome these guests and join me? Thank you.
Member for Vernon-Monashee.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. I too like to welcome the guests from the BC Dairy Association today. I was going to join them for the breakfast, but my leave was not approved because I had to attend Finance Committee meeting. So we're blessed in Vernon-Monashee to have amazing farms. In addition to that, Mr. Speaker, I also want to wish my brother Lakwinder Singh Boparai a very happy birthday. He's 2 years younger than I. And he's been very supportive to my sister and I, not through the childhood, but also after our dad passed away. He's a very kind, caring human being, and he does farming. He also does volunteer social work. So often when I talk about, sometimes work we're doing, the hurdles are thrown in our way, he always says in Punjabi, chal koi na, means doesn't matter. And then he further reminds me that why it's important for the work we do, and let the people what they do to us, but let's not change who we are. Therefore, I'm always so proud of my younger brother. Would the House please join me to wish a very happy birthday to my brother. Happy birthday, Virji.
Member for Shuswap.
Well, thank you, Honourable Speaker. It gives me great pride to rise in the House today to introduce some close friends of mine, John and June Dedude, hailing from Grinrod. They're dairy farmers, have recently opened Farmer John's Market, an amazing agritourism facility in Grinrod, in my riding of Shuswap. Would the House please welcome John and June to this House?
Madam Clerk.
Introduction of bills. Statements by members.
Member for Peace River South.
In Dawson Creek, the greatest show in the Peace is gearing up yet again this year from August 9th to August 14th, and you're all invited. But this year's event is just a little bit more special as we are celebrating the 100th anniversary of the show. That's right, 100 years of holding an agriculture fair and stampede that's become one of the premier stops in Canada for professional rodeo and chuck wagon competitors alike. 100 years ago, this event started between two communities, and Tom Fletcher up top would know this well, from between Rolla and Pooskoopi, because Dawson Creek actually wasn't even around or a city yet. And it was a way to bring all of the farmers of the region together. But it has now grown to the largest event in the entire Peace in BC and Alberta region, bringing tens of thousands of people together every single year for this event. This is truly a family event as well. Everything from an ag show to a heavy horse pull, from a full rodeo, from live country bands, chuck wagon races. Oh yeah, and of course the most important thing for me and my family is the full road of food stands and evening fireworks every single night. The money raised through this event helps support many non-for-profits and community groups who rely on this event every single year for funds to keep going. I want to thank all of those who work tirelessly to make this event happen. People like Carl Gitcheff, who's been the groundskeeper now for over 20 years, Vice President as well, Murray Pratt, and the face and the person who has really kept this going for so many years, and everybody in the town of Dawson Creek and the region knows, Connie Patterson, who is the life of this event. It's because of people like her and all of the people who volunteer their time that we are now able to celebrate 100 years of the greatest show in the Peace coming this year, and I look forward to seeing everybody there. Thank you.
Member for Surrey Panorama.
Mr. Speaker, there's a certain electric energy in our schools. Kids seem more energetic, more carefree. Many of them are preparing for the next chapter of their lives. The bulk of their academic work is complete. Most of them have a plan for next year. All that is left is the closure of their school year to their many years as a student in our school system. It is so nice to see the graduations, convocations, and all of the celebrations that go with these milestones taking place this spring. The grad gowns, the beautiful dresses, the suits, the flowers, the smiles, the friends, the families. It feels more meaningful this year, given what we have endured throughout the pandemic. 2022 grads are celebrating with both their school and home families, with dinners, dances, and large ceremonies. To all the school staff and parents that have made the end of this school year feel special and have worked with students to commemorate this wonderful occasion, thank you. Mr. Speaker, I have to say I really miss the energy in our schools at this time of the year, and I can tell you it is really palpable. To our students, as you close this chapter in your life, go into the world, live your dreams, and more importantly, do good. Be bold enough to use your voice. Be brave enough to listen to your heart, and strong enough to live the life you imagined. Do not let anyone tell you you cannot live your dreams. To the students in my riding, Panorama Ridge, Sullivan Heights Secondary, Regency Christian School, and to all the many grads in Surrey, congratulations. Go and enter the world and enjoy the next phase of the roller coaster ride called life.
Member for Shuswap.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to inform the House to mark your calendars as June 6th to the 13th is Spinal CSF Awareness Week in North America. Now, cerebral spinal fluid, or CSF, truly is the fluid of life. And the daily functions of our brains and nervous systems wouldn't be possible without it. A spinal CSF leak, also known as spontaneous intracranial hypotension, is a debilitating condition that many British Columbians and Canadians may face in their lifetime. Even the former member for Parksville Qualicum, Michelle Stilwell, struggled with it for many years. A leak occurs when the CSF escapes via a tear or abnormality in the dura mater, the tissue that surrounds the brain and the spinal cord. This can be caused by head injuries, brain or sinus surgery, lumbar punctures, and a variety of other circumstances. Now, the most common symptoms of a CSF leak are headaches, usually in the back of the head. However, other symptoms can include neck or shoulder pain, dizziness, changes in vision or hearing, and brain fog, to name a few. Because of this, CSF leaks can go undiagnosed for weeks, months, even years. While data shows that there are approximately 2,000 Canadians struggling today, it is believed the real number could be more than double that. If left unchecked, CSF leaks can be life-threatening and lead to serious long-term health risks, including meningitis, brain infections, or stroke. Now, the best way to protect Canadians is to increase awareness to help lead to more early diagnosis. Although some CSF leaks may heal on their own, others require surgical repair. Now, I encourage all members to wear purple and to tweet and share the facts on social media. Together, let's raise awareness of CSF leaks and help more Canadians live long and healthy lives.
Member for Parksville, Qualicum.
Any normal year, 1 in 5 Canadians experience a mental health or addiction problem. But as we all know, the last 2 years have not been normal. Forward House in downtown Parksville has been providing mental health day programs for adults in our community since 1982. Their house on East Hurst Avenue has a welcoming, home-like environment that moves adults from isolation to connection, with laughter, compassion, and encouragement filling this house. Forward House serves more than 100 adults each month through their day programs and community outreach, along with providing more than 3,300 meals per year. Clients do not need a referral or a formal diagnosis to participate. They can simply walk in and get one-on-one support or join in more than the 25 group programs offered each week. They have recently launched a program called Recovery Initiative for individuals who have started their personal journeys in addiction recovery. One-to-one sessions and small group activities that help individuals embrace a healthier lifestyle while receiving the caring and non-judgmental support from Sarah, the Program Director of Addiction Recovery Services, and her team. And now they are embarking on splitting their mental health and addiction recovery services into 2 locations, both in downtown Parksville. Their Hearst House will continue to provide mental health services, and the soon-to-be-opened Forward Recovery Centre at 129 Alberni Highway. This new centre will be one of the first of its kind in Canada because they offer services that are completely free, they are led by people with lived recovery experience, and they honour the multiple pathways to recovery. Sharon Welch, the Executive Director for Forward House, shared with us this quote from a client, quote, "In my entire life, Forward House is the first community where I felt totally accepted for who I am, not despite it. The healing that's been able to occur as a result is unparalleled," end quote. This client has gone back to school and has now started a successful business in our community. Forward House helps keep clients out of hospital, it keeps them in their homes, and it keeps them connected to our community. They are mostly community funded and they are 100% community focused. Would the House please join with me in congratulating Forward House for their upcoming opening and for the life-changing services they offer to the people of Parksville Qualicum.
Member for Delta South.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, I scream, you scream, we all scream for ice cream. Today, the BC Dairy Association is holding Ice Cream Day outside on the front steps of our BC Legislature. The aim of this fun event is to create more awareness around the BC dairy industry. It gives members of this House a chance to meet with dairy producers and learn more about their experiences dealing with the heat domes, wildfires, catastrophic flooding over the past year. Here are a few interesting facts about the industry. There are 470 dairy farms in BC alone. They're averaging about 150 milking cows per farm, over 12,000 related jobs in the province that contribute over $1.2 billion to BC's GDP, and over 900 million litres of milk are produced annually here in British Columbia. As a proud dairy farmer, I know well, as a proud former dairy farmer, I know well the importance of contented cows and the grueling lifestyle of milking cows twice a day at 5 a.m. and 5 p.m. 365 days a year. All this work translates into the delicious food products we enjoy on a daily basis. From the milk and cream you put in your cereal and coffee to the cheese melted on your favorite sandwich, the butter used on your pancakes, or the cold ice cream you enjoy on a hot summer's day. We should also be proud of the fact that BC dairy farmers are on the cutting edge of environmental innovation. Farmers are taking note of new and emerging technologies around the world to reduce their carbon footprints, like using new technology to rapidly cool raw milk and adopting a geothermal system from Europe that not only draws heat from the fresh raw milk, but it also repurposes that heat for the barn, offices, and family home. To an anaerobic digester on a Delta dairy farm that uses livestock waste and organic consumer waste to create renewable biogas energy sold into the grid. BC's dairy farmers are also committed to providing excellent care for their cattle. The code of practice among dairy farmers includes strict requirements for housing space, bedding, feed and water, health and welfare, animal handling, and staff training. To get more on the scoop around initiatives like these and other important work being done by the BC Dairy Association, please join them outside the Legislature and enjoy some BC ice cream today. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member for North Coast.
Honourable Speaker, before I commence, I seek leave to make an introduction.
Proceed.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. As the legislative session wraps up this week, I will be heading to Ottawa to celebrate my mother's 70th birthday, as well as her husband's 60th birthday. And so I wanted the House to please wish them a happy birthday. My status as the favorite child will now be overtaken by the status of my son as the favorite and only grandson.
Is member making statement?
Thank you. I just trying to follow protocol. Honourable Speaker, Prince Rupert's first library originated as a municipal reading room which opened its doors in 1913. Stocked with magazines and newspapers in mostly foreign languages, it became a favorite haunt of men off the boats, as well as the older men of the city looking for the latest news and gossip. As the city continued to grow, locals realized the need for an official library. The Prince Rupert Public Library came to be as a one-room shack heated by a large wood and coal pot-bellied stove in 1922. During the 30s, the library outgrew its wooden building and expanded into a two-story building shared with the museum and located next to the government agent's house, where our current post office is now located on 2nd Avenue. After the Second World War, when the Army moved out of the Civic Centre, the library moved in. Unfortunately, a fire broke out in 1968 that destroyed the place. Since then, the library has had many homes. The 80s saw renovations to its current location, and in the 90s we saw introductions of computers. I was recently keen to be a part of announcing nearly $39,000 in COVID relief funding, where the funds will be used to replace older computer technology, buy books, equipment, other items, and provide more in-library programming, including activities focusing on the truth and reconciliation. They will also continue to digitize our 90 years running newspaper, the Prince Rupert Daily News. One thing I really appreciate about our library is that it serves all members of our community from all walks of life and for many purposes. It's more than just books, Honourable Speaker. It's access to knowledge, which is obtained in many ways. It's also a warm, welcoming refuge out of the infamous Rupert Rain. Our library staff go above and beyond, helping people. Noteworthy, they can often be seen assisting people fill out online and government forms. From a small wooden shack with a wood stove to a modern library, the Prince Rupert Library has certainly become an integral part of our community. Happy birthday, happy 100th birthday to the Prince Rupert Public Library. Thank you.
Madam Clerk.
Oral questions by members.
Leader of the Official Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we are in the middle of a healthcare crisis with 1 in every 5 British Columbians unable to secure a family doctor, and it's only going to get worse with a wave of retirements coming. But yesterday, the Premier had the worst excuse ever for building his billion-dollar vanity museum boondoggle instead of their promised medical school at SFU Surrey. He said, and I quote, "The commitment to new training spaces for healthcare workers was made just a few years ago. The first call for action on the museum was in 2006. End of quote. So my question to the Premier is simple. Why is a billion-dollar vanity museum boondoggle a higher priority for this Premier than a promised second medical school at SFU Surrey?
Minister of Health.
Well, thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. And the training of new healthcare staff. And as you know, we've added 30,000 people to the BC healthcare system over the last 2 years during the pandemic. Is a fundamental priority of the government, such, Honourable Speaker, that we've just added 602 additional nursing spaces in BC. We've led the country, Honourable Speaker, in new registered nurses since 2017. Now, albeit, Honourable Speaker, we were starting in last place at that time, Honourable Speaker. But nonetheless, Honourable Speaker, we have led the country in new nursing spaces. We established, as the members will know, we said at the time of the last election, over the next 3 years, we'd be adding, through the age cap and other programs, 7,000 new healthcare workers in long-term care. We're at 6,600 today, Honourable Speaker. We're adding new training positions around the province, in particular, Honourable Speaker, in different regions of the province. And the members talk about doctors. We've added 60 new residency spaces for doctors in BC, giving us the largest family residency program in Canada.
Leader of the Official Opposition, supplemental.
Sure. Well, Mr. Speaker, you know, Stats Canada's own numbers show that actually in British Columbia, we have over 10,000 fewer people working in hospitals today, the worst record in Canada, and demonstrating that they're voting with their feet and leaving the system, Mr. Speaker. But, you know, Mr. Speaker, when the BC Liberals were in government, we more than doubled the number of medical training spaces from 128 to 288. Expanding the UBC medical program to the University of Northern British Columbia, to the University of BC Okanagan, and to the University of Victoria. The NDP, now in their second term, have failed to add a single new space. Not one. In spite of the fact that we have a doctor shortage crisis. And when the NDP promised their new SFU Surrey Medical School, they failed to mention that the Premier's billion-dollar vanity museum project was going to be a higher priority. Here is the NDP commitment, and I quote, "The first graduating class could be in 2023-2024, end of quote. But instead, the NDP have chosen a billion-dollar vanity museum project instead, which means that any graduating class on their broken promise new SFU training spaces would be at least 8 years away at minimum, Mr. Speaker. So my question is a simple one for the Premier. When will the first class graduate from their broken medical school promise at SFU Surrey? Will it be before or after he spends the $1 billion on the vanity museum project that they insist on going forward with?
Minister of Health.
Well, Honourable Speaker, the Leader of the Opposition just asserted that we lost 10,000 healthcare workers in 2020. And it is, Honourable Speaker, Honourable Speaker,
let's hear the answer.
Honourable Speaker, all that shows is he can't read a spreadsheet, even though he's Minister of Finance. Honourable Speaker, we count the number. We count the number of healthcare
members will
workers
come
in British
to order.
Columbia. We count the leader of the opposition just said, Stats Canada, I have the numbers in front of me. For 2020, there was a net increase of 10,000 healthcare workers, Honourable Speaker. All that happened, Honourable Speaker.
Members.
All that happened. Honourable Speaker.
Minister, take your seat. Members, if you take outbursts, so it's going to stop the answer coming from the government or stop a question coming from the opposition, it's not going to work. Let's have an order. Let's hear each other, then we can continue with the question period. Thank you. Minister will proceed.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. I mean, it is what the Leader of the Opposition says is contrary to what's actually in the Stats Canada numbers. Honourable Speaker, it's contrary to it. All there was at Stats Canada was a reclassification of the numbers. 10,000 was added to one category, 10,000 was taken to another category. That's all that happened. And the Leader of the Opposition knows this because I believe he can read a spreadsheet, Honourable Speaker. And so he knows, Honourable Speaker. He knows. I give him more credit than a lot of people would give him. Some people would argue, Honourable Speaker, that he can't read a spreadsheet. What the Stats Canada numbers show in 2020 was an increase of 14,000 healthcare workers. What the PSEC numbers knows, you know, he was Minister of Finance, you'll remember, the Public Sector Employers Council showed that the last 2 years, Honourable Speaker, an increase of 30,000 healthcare workers. Why? Because we added nurses, we added health sciences professionals, we added healthcare assistants, Honourable Speaker, we added doctors, Honourable Speaker, and we've got to continue to do that work to continue to build the healthcare system of the future.
Members, there's no point in heckling when somebody is trying to answer or somebody is asking a question. Let's hear each other. We are wasting our, precious time here. Member for Prince George Valemount.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, I can tell the Health Minister one thing. What the Leader of the Opposition knows is that British Columbians desperately need this government to do something to deal with the healthcare crisis that is growing in British Columbia. That's what we know. And it's not the words of the opposition. It is the numbers that Stats Canada provides. And here, for the minister's information, is that there are 10,000 fewer people working in hospitals under this government, the worst in Canada. Those are the facts, those are the numbers. Let's take a look at what happened in British Columbia over the last weekend. We had emergency rooms closing all across this province. The primary care clinics that the NDP and this minister use as a magic bullet, we know are woefully understaffed and people can't get the care they need. That's the fact. And the minister knows it, stands here and dismisses the concerns of British Columbians every single day. Let's talk about Marianne Howard. Maybe this will get the minister's attention. Here's what Marianne said. I have stage 4 metastatic breast cancer, and I live in an isolated area. We've lost the services of 3 family doctors since the beginning of this year. End quote. I think that the minister's words echo pretty hollow with Marianne and thousands of other people like her. So can the Premier tell us why his $1 million vanity museum project is more important than providing the services that British Columbians like Marianne need and deserve?
Here.
Minister of Health.
Honourable Speaker, I take the issues that people raise with me every day about healthcare extremely seriously. The fact is that over the last 2 years, we've added 30,000 people to our healthcare system. They're doctors and nurses and healthcare workers to support people such as Marianne. We've taken the province through, and are taking the province through 2 public health emergencies that have had a significant and lasting effect on our healthcare system. It's why we're taking the steps we've taken to increase the number of family residency positions in BC. It's why we're taking the steps we're taking, working with the doctors of BC to support and sustain existing family practices. Why we're taking the efforts, working with the residents doctors of BC to increase and improve the number of people who choose, of doctors, new doctors who choose longitudinal family practice. Because the issues raised by people like Marion, we do take seriously every day. The member will know, because they're the same stats from national agencies, that the number of people without a family practice doctor doubled between 2003 and 2017, during a period when the previous health minister, now the leader of the opposition, promised everyone would have a family practice doctor. That we are behind other jurisdictions in terms of healthcare reform, and we're taking the steps now in the context of a pandemic to support people everywhere in BC. I'm very proud of our healthcare system, but we always have to do better for people like Marion and everybody else.
Member for Prince George Valemount, supplemental.
Well, the fact of the matter is, and the minister knows this, that not one new training seat under this minister's watch. Exactly. When it comes to physicians in British Columbia, not one, zero. And he talks about people serving in the healthcare system, then why on earth are emergency rooms closing day after day, weekend after weekend, and people are afraid? The minister can stand up and say what he wants to say, but here's what British Columbians are saying. They are afraid. They have their doctors retiring, the longest wait times in the country, clinics are at capacity, and closed emergency rooms. That's under this minister's watch. The ER in Clearwater, for example, has closed 5 times this month. And guess what? Those patients were sent to Kamloops, where staffing shortages are acute and getting worse every single day. That's the system under this minister's watch. So here's what one nurse told us. And I quote, "Nurses are beyond done. They are beyond the point of exhaustion. They are defeated. Every shift is grossly understaffed. Staff are taking stress leaves or they are outright leaving the profession," end quote. That is the record of this premier, this minister. It is time they did the right thing, shelved their billion-dollar boondoggle, and give some hope, support, and the medical care that British Columbians deserve. Will the minister do that today?
Minister of Health.
The member knows, and when you ask a question, I think the question was about Clearwater. There was some rhetoric at the end that at times there was at times
members, let's listen to the answer. Let's hear the answer, otherwise you're not going to get any ice cream today.
Honourable Speaker, the member will know that it is the responsibility of the healthcare system, and in this case of Interior Health, to ensure that treatment can be provided safely for people. The member knows this. Everybody knows this. That last week, Interior Health had the largest number of people off sick of any health authority per capita in the province. That there were, last week, 16,000 people, 16,000 healthcare workers in a very large system with 16,000 workers who had at least one day off sick last week. And that's because of COVID-19 and the challenges it presents to the system. It is because of it, and the Leader of the Opposition can heckle, but it's those nurses that are dealing with the reality of it. The Leader of the previous week, it was 16,500. And 4 weeks ago, it was 17,500. And typically, and they can heckle all they want, Honourable Speaker, but typically those numbers are about half of that. And that's because of COVID-19. I'm very proud, under these very challenging circumstances, of the work of our healthcare workers in Kamloops and in Clearwater and in Vancouver and in Prince Rupert, everywhere in our province. We have to continue to do that work and continue to support healthcare workers like we're doing when we're adding 602 training spaces in British Columbia.
Member for Saanich North and Islands.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. As we continue to talk about this unfolding healthcare crisis in British Columbia, it would be nice to see this BC NDP government proactively working on another growing emergency, the climate emergency. Last summer, climate disasters brought an unprecedented heat dome, a devastating wildfire that entirely destroyed the town of Lytton, and a record-setting wildfire season darkening the skies of our province for months, Mr. Speaker. A recent study examining 20 years of health data in Canada found that people who live near wildfires for the past decade were more likely to develop brain tumors and lung cancer. The worst 3 fire seasons on record in BC have occurred in the last decade. Last summer, over 867,000 hectares of our province burned. Wildfire smoke contains hundreds of dangerous particles, gases, and chemicals, including carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, nitrogen oxides. Anyone who's been exposed to wildfire smoke, even hundreds of kilometers away from the source, will know how unbearable air quality is and how difficult it is to breathe. Mr. Speaker, through you, Honourable Speaker, to the Minister of Public Safety, in 3 of the 5 summers that he has been the minister, wildfire smoke has choked out our communities. What specific actions has his government taken to protect British Columbians from poor air quality?
Government House Leader.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. There's a number of initiatives that have been underway every fire season. One, to ensure that we're prepared as proactively as possibly, whether it's through the fire service, which is under the jurisdiction of the Minister of Forests, through EMBC by ensuring that we've got the emergency social and health supports in place in communities where people are evacuated to. Overall, Honourable Speaker, it is also ensuring that we have a climate action plan that is able to deal with the changing climate here in British Columbia, and we will continue to do the work. And part of that is, of course, is related to the overhaul of the Emergency Program Act that is currently underway.
Member for Saanich Northern Ireland, supplemental.
As I suspected, Mr. Speaker, that our government is doing nothing to protect the air. The workers are breathing from the impacts of wildfires. Today we're celebrating the agricultural industry. People who work outside, Mr. Speaker, in the wildfire smoke. We're seeing other jurisdictions, though, take action, proactive measures. Oregon Occupational Safety and Health created rules to protect workers from the impact of climate disasters, like heat waves, like wildfire smoke. They mandated heat protections like paid breaks, drinking water, a heat illness prevention plan, and access to shade. Wildfire protection measures, specifically including N95 masks, which the Minister of Health talked about in estimates having 19 million on hand, and as well medical checks. The BC NDP government likes to think of themselves as the Workers' Party, and yet they've not done anything to protect workers from the impact of climate change. They failed to protect schools, they failed to protect public spaces, and have failed to put plans in place to protect British Columbians from the polluted air, the worst of which comes from these wildfire seasons. My question, Honourable Speaker, is through you to the Premier. He says he is a friend of the worker. What is he doing to protect workers, including teachers, agricultural workers, construction workers, and any other worker that works outside from the poor air quality that we are seeing summer after summer as a result of wildfires?
Minister of Public Safety.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker, and I appreciate the question from the member, and I want to take him that no government takes workers' occupational health and safety more seriously than this side of the House. Whether it's ensuring that we've increased the standards in terms of the removal of asbestos, Honourable Speaker, whether it's ensuring that we have some of the toughest health and safety standards and work-safe standards of any province, any jurisdiction in this country, Honourable Speaker. It's ensuring that when firefighters go out to work that they've got the presumptive cancer security systems in place. We've done that. Sometimes the opposition's done that, but all of us in this House have taken that very seriously, Honourable Speaker. At the same time, we ensure that when our fire crews go out on those front lines on the fighting fires, they have the protective equipment that they need. That's always been the case for the fire service, and it will always continue to be the case. So to suggest that is not happening, Honourable Member, is absolutely not true.
Member for West Vancouver, Sea to Sky.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It probably shouldn't come as a surprise to the House that I rise to talk a little bit about this transit strike in Sea to Sky, which has been going on for 17 weeks now. Squamish, Whistler, and Pemberton have not had bus service. Families, workers, employers, communities are all saying this has got to end. Enough is enough. Tomorrow, I think we'll bring this NDP government the distinction of presiding over the longest transit strike in the history of British Columbia, the longest BC transit strike. As a matter of interest, though, they hold the current record. Right now, the previous longest transit strike was under the NDP as well. So maybe they're looking to break it. One would hope not. But this House is in the last week of session. This is the last opportunity that we have to force these parties into binding arbitration. A simple question to the Premier and perhaps the Labour Minister: will the Minister bring legislation to this House to force these parties into binding arbitration?
Minister of Labour.
Thank you, Honourable Chair. I share the frustration brought on by the member of the residents of Whistler, Pemberton, and Squamish. And I'm not happy that both parties are not able to resolve this dispute this long into the dispute. Mr. Speaker, I have spoken to both parties yesterday because both parties were able to negotiate a tentative agreement. It was put to vote for ratification, and the members of the union rejected that tentative agreement. So I've spoken to both of them last night and this morning, and I have reminded them their responsibility not only to their members or to the shareholders, but also to the residents of that region that they serve. And that I have made it very clear that we're not happy, that they're not able to resolve this, that they must get back to the bargaining table. They must get back to the bargaining table because that's where the agreement will be negotiated. Not in this House, Mr. Speaker, not anywhere else, at the bargaining table.
Members, please continue.
I think the opposition, knowing their record on labor, Mr. Speaker, labor rights, they're heckling and they're trying to score a cheap political points. I think that is a shameful. So, Mr. Speaker, I'm talking to...
Members, order, order. Minister will continue.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So as I said, that I have spoken to both sides, and I have brought to their attention their responsibility, and I will have more to say later today.
Member for West Vancouver, Capilano.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The NDP's own documents show that the Royal BC Museum was in far better condition, Mr. Speaker, than the average school in British Columbia. In fact, a school with an identical rating to the museum by this government would not even be considered for replacement. So not only are schools in worse shape today than they were 5 years ago, but the NDP are not keeping up with school repair bills and have deferred an additional $1 billion while spending money on a museum that nobody asked for. So how can this NDP government be in such a rush to spend $1 billion on a vanity museum project when there are schools with our children in them in far worse condition than the museum today?
Minister of Education.
Thank
you very much, Honourable Speaker, and I thank the member for the question. And I do have to say it's a welcome opportunity to talk about the investments that our government has made in education, both on operating and certainly in capital. I would want to highlight the fact that over the last 3 years, we've invested close to $3 billion in education to build new schools, to build replacement schools, additions, to seismically upgrade schools so that our children have safe places to learn. And in fact, we've been doing that at a rate much more quickly than the BC Liberals ever did when they were on this side of the House. They spent $574 million between 2012 and 2017. Members. Since 2017, we have invested over $1.2 billion to seismically upgrade schools across our province. Projects have resulted in 58 projects have resulted in 32,000 safe seats for British Columbia students. Over the next 3 years, we will invest close to $800 million to accelerate our seismic mitigation programs so that we can build safe seats for British Columbia students. That is a record that is unmatched in the history of this program, Honourable Speaker.
Member for Kamloops North Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, the numbers just don't match up to what the minister is saying. And the reality is this is about $1 billion vanity museum project that the Premier has decided to jump the queue and prioritize ahead of 250 schools, most of which are more seismically unsafe than the museum. And in fact, if the NDP did just a modest update to the museum like they're doing in Alberta for the $120 million in the Glenville Museum, we'd have about an extra $800 million to spend on schools. If they followed the Treasures for Generations, Mr. Speaker, from the Royal BC Museum and Archives that came out in 2018, that's $150 million. They'd still have another $800 million to spend on school and seismic upgrades. In Surrey, the rating has gotten worse of the average school by 50% since 2017 under this government. In Chilliwack, it's worsened by 180%. When will this government start to prioritize the health and safety of our children over the Premier's $1 billion vanity museum project?
Minister of Education.
Well, Honourable Speaker, I have to say that the record of our government is really clear when it comes to the investments that we have made in ensuring that students have the spaces that they need in terms of new schools that we have built, the additions that we have built, the investments that we have made, working in partnership with school districts across the province. And I appreciate that it's a little, perhaps, not something that the members opposite are familiar with, because when they were on this side, they closed 250 schools across our province, Honourable Speaker. So we're investing $2.65 million over the next 3 years. That's on top of close to $3 billion in the last 4. $1.3 billion to expand and replace schools to address growth, close to $800 million for seismic upgrades, $554 million for routine capital. And those projects, the projects we have approved, Honourable Speaker, since 2017 include 18 new or expanded schools in Surrey. The other side of the House did nothing in Surrey when they were on this side. One addition they built. One addition in the whole time they were on this side of the House. 1,800 new seats in Sooke, 4 new or expanded schools in Chilliwack. We replaced Quesnel High School, a new middle school in Lake Country, and Honourable Speaker, the list goes on and on and on, and I'd be happy to spend as much time as the other side would like enumerating the many projects that we are investing in. Thank you.
Member for Kamloops North Thompson, supplemental.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, the minister might want to pay attention to the Vancouver School Board meeting today because they're talking about closing schools in Vancouver at the board meeting today, under this government's watch. The question was about the prioritization of dollars, putting the Premier's Vanity Museum project ahead of schools, unnecessarily. It's about the prioritization of this government choosing that school safety should take a back seat to the Premier's billion-dollar vanity museum project. In fact, seismic upgrades to schools, Mr. Speaker, under this government, we can only find net 18 new schools that this government's even been working on. They know how to spend a lot of dollars. They don't know how to get any results for the dollars spent. That's why everyone's so concerned about the billion-dollar vanity museum project. We could do over 100 extra schools with seismic upgrades while still following the Treasures for Generations program, which describes almost word for word what the tourism minister talks about for $1 billion in terms of seismic upgrades, space revamping, accessibility, digital outreach, everything. It's all in this document for $150 million, Mr. Speaker, made in 2018. But instead, the Premier wants to keep 100 schools worth of children at risk from seismic upgrades so his museum project can jump the queue. When will this government stop this ridiculous billion-dollar vanity museum project, follow the Treasures for Generations, and get 100 extra schools seismically upgraded instead?
Let's hear the answer. Minister of Education.
Thank you very much, Honourable Speaker. In 2016-2017, the capital budget for our K-12 system was less than $500 million. This year, it's over $900 million. Last year, we spent over $1 billion investing in schools in this province. We are producing seismic upgrades to schools at a rate much faster than the previous government ever did. Our budget for seismic upgrades is twice. We've spent more than twice what they have spent. And over the next 3 years, we are investing over close to $800 million to ensure that we can accelerate our seismic mitigation program. This is work we do in partnership with school districts to ensure that we are delivering safe seats for British Columbia's children as quickly as we can.
The bell ends the question period. Members, I have the honor of tabling Ombudsperson's report titled Shortchange Ensuring Federal Benefits Paid to the Province Reach Caregivers of Children with Disabilities. Member for North Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have the honour to present the first report of the Select Standing Committee on Public Accounts for the third session of the 42nd Parliament, titled Summary of Activities 21-22, and I move that report be taken as read and received.
Members, the question is to read the report be taken as read and received. All those in favour indicate aye. Aye. Those who oppose, motion carried. Member.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I ask leave of the House to move a motion to adopt the report.
Is leave granted? Aye. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It gives me a great pleasure as Chair of the Select Standing Committee on Public Accounts to provide the summary of activities 21-22 to the Chamber and to the broader public. I want to first off thank all the committee members. I'm relatively new to the role. Previously, it was the member from Peace River South that was chairing, and we've had some new membership filter through over the last year as well. In addition, I want to give thanks to the Clerk's office for keeping us on track with all of those changes and making sure that the important work that the committee does continue on in a way forward. Mr. Speaker, we have a great working relationship with the Auditor General's office, and in reviewing all of the reports that the Auditor General does, holding various government agencies to account to make sure that reports and recommendations in the audits that they contain are being followed through on and delivered on for the betterment of all the public. I look forward to the next year's work as well as we continue on, and if the public's at all interested in what happens in terms of accountability for all the various public agencies, I would strongly recommend they look up the report, see what type of actions, reports we have reviewed over the year, and I will leave it at that, I guess. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member for Port Moody Coquitlam.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd also like to thank the Auditor General, their staff, the Clerk's office and their staff, and all members of the committee. I've served on this committee, I think, longer than anyone else since we've been government, and I understand the very important work that is carried out in providing oversight and accountability over public sector administration. And just wanted to highlight, if you turn to the back of the report, there's a little bit of a chronology. We've spent some time formalizing our follow-up process for audited organizations. And since 2015, all audited organizations have been required to table annual progress reports, but in our new process, there will also be an annual report from the Auditor General, which will help provide better assurance on the implementation of completed recommendations. And this is a new direction that we're going and which will help close the loop and ensure more timely implementation of recommendations. And this new process is expected to be fully implemented in fall of next year. So I thank everyone in the committee again for their ongoing efforts. Thank you.
Members, the question is the adoption of the report. All those in favor indicate aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Attorney General.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. I rise to present the annual report for the Office of the Superintendent of Professional Governance for 2021-22.
Madam Clerk.
Orders of the day.
Government House Leader.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. I call second reading Bill PR 401.
Member for West Vancouver, Sea to Sky.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that Bill PR 401, entitled Sea to Sky University Amendment Act 2022, be read a second time now. Mr. Speaker, the Sea to Sky University Amendment Act 2022 deals with the Quest University, which is an internationally respected liberal arts university located in Squamish. After some significant financial challenges, it was forced to sell its campus assets and lease back the properties. The original Sea to Sky University Act did not contemplate the necessity for Quest to enter into a triple net lease situation. The standard tax exemption was originally provided for owned land, and this amendment proposes to extend the property tax exemption to leased land within the District of Squamish. The District of Squamish is very supportive of both the university and the proposed amendment. This same provision has provided to other post-secondary institutions, including Trinity Western University, so there's certainly precedence there, Mr. Speaker. As a sponsor of the bill, I obviously support this amendment and look forward to the university rebuilding from its economic and pandemic challenges. And I look forward to third reading. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Seeing no further speakers, members, the question is second reading of the bill. All those in favor indicate aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Member for West Vancouver, Sea to Sky.
Mr. Speaker, by leave, I move that the bill be committed to the Committee of the Whole for consideration forthwith.
Shall it be granted? Aye. The question is that the bill be committed to a Committee of the Whole to be considered forthwith. All those in favor indicate aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Member? Committee chairs.
Yes. So, yeah.
Thank you, members. Shall Clause 1 pass? So ordered. On Clause 2, shall Clause 2 pass? So ordered. Shall the preamble pass? So ordered. Shall the title pass? So ordered. somebody might want to stand up. Member for Sea to Sky.
I move, Mr. Speaker, that the committee rise and report the bill complete without amendment.
Members have heard the question. All those in favour? Aye. Opposed? Carried.
Committee Chair.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Committee reports Bill PR 401 complete without amendment.
When shall the bill be read a third time, Government House Leader?
Now.
The question is the third reading of Bill number PR 401, Sea to Sky University Amendment Act 2022. All those in favour indicate aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. The motion for third reading Bill number PR 401 entitled Sea to Sky University Amendment Act 2022 is carried and the bill has passed. Government House Leader.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. In this chamber, I call continued estimates debate for the Ministry of the Attorney General, and in the Douglas Fur Room, Section A, I call continued estimates debate for the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure.
Committee chairs.
Attorney General and Minister responsible for housing.
Honourable Speaker, I move vote number 15, resolve that a sum not exceeding Resolved that a sum not exceeding $581,587,000 be granted to Her Majesty to defray the expenses of Ministry of Attorney General, Ministry Operations to 31st March 2023.
Member for Peace River South.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you to the Minister. Obviously, we are transitioning on the estimates portion now under the Attorney General to the housing portion of his responsibilities, which will carry on for a little while here. Got a few minutes before lunch, and we'll try not to get too deep into to too much and save that for the afternoon, but also want to thank the Minister's staff that are here that will be helping, I assume, in different capacities with some of the numbers. I'd like to start off, Chair, to the Minister, just starting off with some simplistic questions around the Building BC program. I know every year we announce, I don't want to talk about the targets, I want to talk about the numbers right now that usually get announced about every year about what's open in the different categories under the Building BC program. As just put on the record here for the minister, we have the 9 main portions under there, which are the affordable rental housing, the deepening affordability housing, community housing fund, regional housing first, the women's transition housing, Indigenous housing, rapid response to homelessness project, the supportive housing fund, and the homelessness action plan. Those are 9 different components the minister is very well aware of, that there's been work that government has been doing around opening different facilities in the housing component around the province. So I know I just announced to the minister those 9 different ones, as I guess this would be similar to last year. Just looking for an update, looking for the open numbers for those categories. If the minister has those close by to be able to update for me. Of course, again, looking for what's open, what's got people actually in the units at this time. Just looking for an update.
Attorney.
Thank you, Honourable Chair. I'll provide a couple sets of numbers in relation to these different programs. Completed, which is the number that the member is interested in, under construction, and then total. And the difference between completed plus under construction minus total, the difference of those is projects that are either in development or initiated. Those are projects that have been funded but are not currently under construction. So on the affordable rental housing program, 465 units completed, 396 under construction. Rapid response to homelessness, 1,894 completed. Deepening affordability of existing projects, 1,736 completed, 398 under construction. Community housing fund, 711 completed, 3,374 under construction. Indigenous Housing Fund, 388 completed, 373 under construction. Supportive Housing Fund, 1,584 completed, 1,275 under construction. Women's Transition Housing Fund, 155 completed, 309 under construction. Homelessness Action Plan, 286 completed, 183 under construction. Housing Hub Provincial Rental Housing Supply, 2,341 completed, 985 under construction. Housing Hub Affordable Home Ownership, 11 under construction. I'll run quickly through the totals for each of these programs, which would include completed under construction or in development or initiated. Affordable rental housing, 1,247. Rapid response to homelessness, 1,894. Deepening affordability of existing projects, 2,194. Community Housing Fund, 8,829. Indigenous Housing Fund, 1,331. Supportive Housing Fund, 3,786. Women's Transition Housing Fund, 794. Homelessness Action Plan, 469. Housing Hub, 4,934. Housing Hub Affordable Home Ownership, 554. The subtotals for Building BC, 7,219 units completed, 6,308 under construction, a total of 20,544 units completed under construction and development or initiated. For Housing Hub, 2,341 completed, 996 under construction, 5,488 total.
Member.
Thank you. Appreciate those numbers. I figured the minister would have those, so it's good. I have a question, though, just with some of those. So it's great to see that in some of those categories we are seeing progress, some areas more than other, and I'm sure at some point, maybe even this afternoon, we'll get into maybe where some of the struggles are. Can the minister just explain to me again, when he talks about the difference between initiated and under construction, we use different terminology, but I know that BC Housing and their Affordable Housing Investment Plan report said that when the government's saying initiated, their exact quote, I believe, said, initiated means no commitment has been made by government yet towards them financially. Is that an accurate statement, or is there something that's changed in the process? I appreciate, you know, the commitments that government's trying to make around affordable housing, because there's a lot that's needed out there. I'm just trying to quantify, obviously, when the minister is saying initiated, is it already been approved through Treasury? Is the funding there? Or are these announcements that are yet to be funded at some point in the next maybe year or two?
Attorney.
Thank you, Honourable Chair. I thank the member for the question because there's some nuance here. Projects under construction have final project approval and are in construction. That's probably the most intuitive of the different categories. In development has received provisional project approval. There may be an additional approval that's required from Treasury Board in relation to financing, but they've gone through the BC Housing financial approval process. Initiated, those projects have been publicly announced by government, but the specific financials of the projects have not yet been approved.
Member.
Thank you. So on the numbers that the minister just put out on the different categories on what's opened, what's under construction, I appreciate those. Can he explain to me then, and I will say this up front, and the minister knows, I'm saying this with all due respect as being a new critic in this role. I've had a lot of reading and catching up to do to what the knowledge that the minister would have, obviously, in this. The minister and government has made commitments around 114,000 affordable housing units within 10 years. Can the minister explain then, on the categories that he just gave to me, and I might be wrong here, but on the categories he gave to me, are those all of or part of the 114,000 commitment that this government has made? And if that's not all of the 114, where are the other categories that are going to fill in on to complement what the numbers he's given me to reach that 114,000 goal?
Minister.
Thank you, Honourable Chair. So the numbers that I gave the member correspond to BC Housing programs. Government's initiatives go beyond those. So I can provide the member with a more complete list of housing initiatives, which include things like the COVID-19 action plan, the hotel purchases, and the student housing initiatives of government. This includes updates from the September 2017 budget update and the housing plan / budget 2018. The numbers will be broadly similar, but there are additional categories, as I said. Affordable rental housing, I'll just give the total number of units that are in progress for now, and we can drill down as the member wishes. Affordable rental housing, 1,247. Rapid response to homelessness, 1,894. Deepening affordability of existing projects, 2,194. Community Housing Fund, 8,829. Women's Transition Housing Fund, 794. Supportive Housing Fund, 3,786. Indigenous Housing Fund, 1,331. Housing Hub, 5,488. Student Housing, 6,077. Homelessness Action Plan, 469. Regional Housing First Program, CRD, 856. COVID-19 Action Plan, hotel purchases, 800 units. The total of those units in progress is 33,765. The total of the units from those categories under construction is 9,165. The total number of units open, 13,627. And our target for those categories is 39,110. That provides a more complete picture of where we're at on the housing supply program that's directly funded by government. In terms of the 114,000 units, a significant portion of those units will be direct funded or supported by government. But we also, the member will know, recently passed a bill here in the House about purchasing land adjacent to transit stations through the Ministry of Transportation for the purposes of constructing more affordable housing near transit stations. That is a program that will potentially be delivered by the private sector without additional government support other than the land purchase and transit-based community planning engaged in by the local government. We anticipate that those units are also going to contribute to our affordability targets and the 114,000 units. And we're also doing other work with local governments around their planning processes and supports in order to be able to deliver more housing faster, including especially affordable and rental housing. We will have more updates about that as we continue our work.
Member.
Appreciate that information now. So I'm just trying to understand again. So when the minister and government's made the announcement, I guess, of 114,000 units by 2027, it sounds like from the minister's answer, and he'll correct me if I'm wrong, and it's important information, I think, for not only for myself, but for the public and that as well. So 114,000 promised units is not government subsidized, government initiated, government funded, I guess, units. It sounds like a portion of those is the expectation that will be coming from the private sector, as the minister and I both know, of course, depending on zoning and through the permitting process. That'll be a discussion later that him and I will probably agree on some issues here. But on this one here, especially from the last answer talking about the new bill around acquisition of lands around transportation corridors, how did they come up with 114,000, I guess, number, if I'm understanding the minister correctly, when it sounds like a big portion of that is going to be attributed to the private sector who will be building affordable housing as part of possibly a large development process where a percentage will be required of them to do so. Did I understand that correctly? Am I stating it accurately? And if so, how much of that 114,000 was earmarked to be non-government funded and private sector developed?
Attorney.
Thank you, Honourable Chair. Embedded in our Building BC program is a significant program invested in by government called the Housing Hub. It's a $2 billion construction financing program designed for the private sector, and private sector could include nonprofit organizations, churches, legions, others, to facilitate the development of rental housing. There's expertise for people who are new to development, like there's a legion that wants to build housing on property that they own, or a church. And there is construction financing for more sophisticated developers. In exchange for the construction financing, we ask for commitments around increased affordability on the site. So the private sector development has been built into this plan from the beginning. The original target of 114,000 came from the Affordable Housing Association in British Columbia, and a report that they did about the capacity of government, the ability of government to deliver through things like transit-oriented development and strategic investment, more affordable housing. So the member will know that this program was initiated 2017. The planning process, the implementation started in 2018. Things have shifted quite dramatically since then in terms of inflation, in terms of around building supplies, in terms of the tightness of the labor market, and the economic outlook going forward. So we're going to do a review of this program to ensure that we are responding to the bottlenecks and the challenges of delivering affordable housing. If there are changes that are needed to the program, in other words, different categories of housing are more in demand than previously. Some programs were more successful than others in implementation, and whether we need to shift focus. It is not and it's not proposed to be a change to the total number or to the goal of affordable housing that the government has. Instead, just to make sure that we're still responsive to the realities on the ground for British Columbians who are looking for housing. And so that review process will be underway. But the member is correct. We are looking to the private sector for delivery of some of these, and in fact, a significant number of these affordable housing units in partnership with government through different initiatives.
Member.
Thank you, Chair. I'll probably have a couple of questions in a little bit around the Housing Hub and through the process. I'll maybe hold off on those for a few minutes to continue on with the train of thought that I had, though, around this section. So when we're looking at the different areas, the Community Housing Fund is one of them. Now, if I'm reading the budget documents correctly, it appears there's about $100 million that's been added in the budget for the Community Housing Fund. The comment was to needing to accelerate it. When I'm looking at the numbers that the minister just gave me, Community Housing Fund right now is sitting at, I'm going to just guessing numbers by the minister just gave me, around 4 or 5%, maybe not even that high, of the commitment target that they were looking for. Their original 10-year target was just shy of 15,000 units, if I remember correctly. And so I guess my question around the Community Housing Fund is, am I reading this correctly? Is there another $100 million that's been added? And if so, why was that added? Is there struggles of getting projects off the ground, or maybe the minister can just highlight that for me a little bit?
Minister.
Thank you, Honourable Chair. Just for clarity, the Community Housing Fund are 8,829 of our target, which is 14,350. So I'm not sure how the member got 5% from that. And the $100 million this is a 10-year plan. So the $100 million was brought forward from future years. Because of the demand, we saw significantly more applications for Community Housing Fund construction than we had funding. So understanding that there were projects that were ready to go, ready to break ground, and that the need is quite urgent, we brought $100 million forward to accelerate that work. There was one other component to the member's question that I wanted to address. There are categories of government's work where we are significantly over our target. For example, our supportive housing fund, we have 3,786 of 2,500 targeted units, so we've exceeded the target by 1,200. This program is for supportive housing for the homeless or those at risk. And the reason why we're so significantly over target was a real emphasis during the COVID period to get people inside to manage the pandemic, and also to ensure that people were not COVID positive, sick in parks and community spaces in the province. So there have been shifts in emphasis as we've rolled the program along, which is leading us to want to do this review to make sure that we're responsive to the needs in community with the funding that we're delivering.
Thank you, and I'll apologize if I wrote something down wrong. As the minister was stating numbers, I had heard 711 completed under the Community Housing Fund. Last year it was 310, I heard 711. So I'll go back and look at that. I might have written it down wrong from what in the wrong category as the minister was stating all of the numbers, and there might have been more added to that that I didn't catch, but I think it's just important to also highlight. So we're hearing the extra $100 million put in there for a multitude of reasons, but looking through the different programs then, it does appear, and maybe I'll give the minister an opportunity to explain to the House, seems like some programs are very successful, according to the minister, and there's some that are really struggling to get even close to what the targets were. Is there a common theme maybe that the minister can say is one of the struggles to have some of these different categories? And I know, again, when we're talking about the Indigenous housing or the women's transition housing, obviously there's going to be different components built into the process to get development or get units open. But is there a common thread? Is there a reason why some programs seem to be successful and some are not? Or is there maybe different reasons that the minister could enlighten us on?
Minister. Thank you, Honourable Chair. So the member will be aware of some of my public frustrations that I've expressed about approvals processes within municipal governments, the length of time that they take and the impact that they have on affordability. This is true for private sector development projects. It's also true for, unfortunately, BC Housing and Government affordable housing projects. The longer these projects take, the more expensive they are. We see rising interest rates. We see rising cost of goods required to build the housing, and it's been very frustrating, frankly, the length of time that it takes some governments to get to approval of these badly needed units. So it's a generalization. There are communities that have really gone above and beyond to get these approved quickly, and one of the positive stories I'm going to cite is the City of Victoria, where an affordable housing project is consistent with the official community plan. They can be approved without public hearing. That's a new initiative that they undertook following legislation introduced by government. They've invited us to use statutory immunity, which allows us to bypass municipal approvals processes to construct housing for people who are homeless or at risk of homelessness in the community, which has literally taken a year and a half to 2 years off the construction process. And I'm just incredibly grateful for municipalities that place that emphasis on delivering this housing quickly. It's one of the challenges that has faced the Community Housing Fund in getting units open. We have 3,300, the number 711 is correct in terms of units that are open for the Community Housing Fund. We have 3,374 units under construction, 4,744 in that planning stage, and 8,829 total for the category in progress. So That's part of the challenge. The other part of the challenge with some of these programs is they are application-based. We're dependent on people to come forward and take up the funding. Another reason why we're doing the review, I would say personally, I would like to see us make more progress in the Women's Transition Housing Fund. This is housing for women fleeing violence and spaces for them. We have a target of 1,500 units. And 155 units are open, 309 units under construction, 330 in the planning stage. So I'm working with the parliamentary secretary, working on issues related to gender-based violence to ensure that the Transition Housing Fund is meeting the needs of the sector, and that will be part of our review as well.
Member.
Thank you for that. I know the minister and others, quite a bit on this, will probably agree on, especially as a former mayor. I'll probably dive into some of the discussion around objectives, especially with local government, maybe later on this afternoon. And I also just want to also state that the direction around trying to deal with affordable housing, there's no argument obviously from myself or anyone in this house that this is important. When we look at the affordability crisis that's facing the province right now, obviously there's support to make sure we reach some of these goals, and that's why the pressure will be, the government's making announcements. Not criticizing the announcements, I want to make sure that those are actually achieved. So that's where the commentary will really come in, because these are important for people right across the province, which maybe leads me to maybe a general question. It'll be hard for the minister to answer. I'll acknowledge that up front, but it's more around a decision process from a provincial basis, because the minister just highlighted, let's say, the city of Victoria. And there are some municipalities, again, we'll talk about it in detail maybe after lunch, around the process of approving programs and development. But when we're looking at these specific programs around the affordability funding for these different, 9 or 10 that we talked about, how does not necessarily the ministry, but through obviously the different associations, how do we determine where that funding goes? And by that I mean, again, this is a provincial issue. This is not a downtown Victoria or a downtown Vancouver issue only. When we especially, as the minister just highlighted, women's transition housing, that's important in places like Fort St. John and Dawson Creek as well as downtown Vancouver. So how do we determine through, whether it's through an application process, because I'm trying to understand this as well and bring awareness to this, how do we determine how that funding is dispersed, how the projects are approved to try to reach people right around the province, not just in a select few areas based on obviously where the majority of the population is?
Minister.
Thank you, Honourable Chair. I'll keep my answer brief, and we can go into more detail after the break if the member likes. The high-level process is that the vast majority of these programs are call for proposals. So BC Housing will announce that there's an opening for applications for funding through one of these housing funds, the Indigenous Housing Fund, the Supportive Housing Fund, Women's Transition Housing Fund. Applications will be received by BC Housing. They'll be evaluated and scored by staff on a number of different factors. The need in the community, the affordability delivered by the program, and considerations of distribution geographically, to make sure that funding is distributed across the province. Those recommendations from staff go up to Senior BC Housing Management level, where a recommended list of projects goes forward to government. It goes through internal processes around fiscal safeguards for government through Treasury Board and through my ministry. And then those projects are approved to go ahead. One of the biggest challenges of that approach is it depends largely on either a private sector developer or a nonprofit organization or both to be bringing forward these applications, or municipality, or there are lots of communities in the province that don't have that capacity. They don't have nonprofit organizations. Some communities don't even have sufficient development capacity for what they need, even just for the private market, and I'm thinking of Prince Rupert in this example. So it's another reason why we're doing a review of this program, to make sure that we're responding to these communities, especially more rural and remote communities where there's limited capacity in the nonprofit sector and the development sector, which is what these programs are really based on and assume exist in these communities. With that, Honourable Speaker, I move the committee rise, report progress, and ask leave to sit again.
Members have heard the question. All those in favour? Opposed? Carried. Thank you, members.
Committee Chair.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Committee reports progress on the Ministry of Attorney General and Housing and seeks leave to sit again.
When shall the committee sit again, Government House Leader?
Next day.
So ordered. Committee Chair.
Mr. Speaker, Committee of Supply Section A reports progress on the estimates of the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure and asks leave to sit again.
When shall the committee sit again, Government House Leader?
Next sitting, Speaker.
So ordered. Government House Leader.
I move that House do now adjourn.
Members, you heard the motion. All those in favour indicate aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. This House stands adjourned until 1:30 p.m.